تمام نسخة أو أنا إلي تمام.
من رئيسة لجنة أضمها بالبيت، بنت رئيسة لجنة خليها أنا مذكرة بيه.
Shall we begin, Doctor? Begin. Okay. Now to begin with Ramadan Kareem وكل عام وأنتم بخير. In the name of God, we meet today to examine Mustapha Abbas Sahan, an MA student in the College of Education for Human Sciences, الروشيد, in the contents of his thesis entitled Enslavement in لفيرونيكا Roth's Teleology, الاستعباد في ثلاثية المختلف لفيرونيكا Roth. He's from Department of Education. His field of study is literature, and I would like before beginning the examination to introduce the members, the honorable members of the examining committee. Usually we begin from right, but I'll begin from left with assistant prof Dr. Azhar Nouri Fajr from College of Education, الروشيد, and assistant prof Asma Makram Saeed, also from College of Education for Human Sciences, الروشيد, and assistant prof Amir Rasul Mahdi, PhD. He is from College of Arts, University of Baghdad. All the members except me are from College of Arts. Baghdad University, except me, I am from Mustansiriya University. Now, I would like to ask Mustafa. Mustafa, would you kindly read the abstract in both English and Arabic? Begin, please.
The earliest notions of enslavement denote the way property law covered people. This coverage means that people could be owned as property and instructed to do whatsoever their master/owner wishes them to. Though its early stages are distinctive, enslavement had to undergo numerous shape-shifting developments in order to be acceptable within modern-day societies and known under different labels. The author of Divergent trilogy, Lefyronика Roth, sets herself the task of mapping out the modern-day representations of enslavement through Divergent, Insurgent, and Allegiant, making her trilogy extend so readily to be inspected from postmodern conceptualization and sensibility. This study investigates the flexibility of modern-day enslavement and the varying representations through which enslavement is sugar-coated in order to appear acceptable within modern-day societies. The analysis is based on a walk-through reading of the trilogy that divides the study into 4 chapters. The first chapter covers a preliminary definition of the key concepts involved within the analysis, as well as an introduction to the trilogy and a literature survey. Chapter 2 analyzes Divergent and points out how enslavement takes the form of interpellation and idea implanting. Chapter 3 analyzes Insurgent and sheds the light on the discursive practices that formulate the path to enslavement. Furthermore, Chapter 4 dissects Allegiant by highlighting the representation of enslavement through constant surveillance and panoptic mechanisms. Finally, the study ends with a conclusion that sums up the findings of the study, the findings of the analysis and discussions. إن الإشارات المبكرة للاستعباد في النصوص التاريخية تشير لشمول البشر في قانون الملكية، وعليه فإن البشر أصبحوا ممتلكات يمكن اقتناؤها، وبإمكان السيد أو المالك أن يأمرهم ويقوم بتوجيههم بالطريقة التي يشاء. إن الاستعباد قد بدأ بأساليب واضحة للعيان، ومر لاحقا في تطورات تدريجية أدت لتغيير شكله واسمه، حيث كانت هذه التطورات سببا في قبول الاستعباد في نظر المجتمعات الحديثة. فالكاتبة فيرونيكا روث مؤلفة ثلاثية المختلف حملت على عاتقها تسليط الضوء على التمثلات الحديثة للاستعباد في المختلف، الثائر والموالي، الأمر الذي يجعل تلك الثلاثية قابلة للفهم والتناول ما بعد الحداثوي. تهدف هذه الدراسة إلى معاينة مدى تمظهر الاستعباد في العصر الحديث عن كثب، وفضلا عن معاينة التشكيلات المختلفة التي يتخللها الاستعباد ليخرج بالمظهر اللائق ليكون مقبولا في نظرة المجتمعات الحديثة، علما أن هذه الدراسة تعتمد على قراءة تحليلية ما بعد حداثوية للثلاثية أعلاه، حيث تقسم في 4 فصول. يشمل الفصل الأول تعريفات تمهيدية للمفاهيم التحليلية التي تم اعتمادها، بالإضافة إلى المقدمة إلى أحداث الثلاثية ونوعها الأدبي والدراسات السابقة التي تناولت هذه الثلاثية. ويتناول الفصل الثاني من تحليل الجزء الأول من الثلاثية المختلف، ويسلط الضوء على الطريقة التي يتمثل فيها الاستعباد على هيئة زرع أفكار وأيديولوجيات. أما الفصل الثالث فيحلل الجزء الثاني من الثلاثية الثائر، ويركز على الإجراءات التعسفية التي ترسم الطريق للاستعباد. ويتناول الفصل الرابع الجزء الأخير من الثلاثية الموالي، الذي يسلط الضوء على الطريقة التي يتجسد فيها الاستعباد في أساليب المراقبة الشاملة. وأخيرا تنتهي الدراسة باستنتاج يقوم بتلخيص نتائج التحليل والمناقشة.
Thank you, Mustafa, for reading the abstract both in English and Arabic. Of course, now the floor is Dr. Azhar's. She's going to examine you. I want you to listen to her carefully and to answer as precisely as possible. There are a number of things, okay, we would like to you to clarify to us. And to begin with, I have to admit that the study is very interesting. And the concepts, let's say, examined, illustrated, and discussed here are very relevant to our contemporary life and society. So the floor is yours, Dr. Azhar.
Good morning and welcome everyone. Okay, Mustafa, I was very much fascinated reading your thesis. It is a very good work. You have done a great effort, and I appreciate highly the great work you have done. Okay? However, no work is complete. Okay? So, concerning me as a reader, I have observed certain things. I think if you take them into consideration, you are going to add too much value to your thesis. First of all, I have general comments and questions I want to ask you about things you have met in your thesis concerning the design. First of all, you are writing a thesis in literature. Why did you choose the APA style while mostly the MLA is used? Can you justify to me that thing?
Okay, thank you for your comment. Very beautiful comments at the very beginning. I checked the MLA style in documentation. I thought that it's not that suitable to my kind of resources, because a lot of my resources are like I use multiple books from the same author. Like, for example, Foucault, I use like 3 or 4 books of this author. So I had to add the date to the according to MLA. I have to add the date within the text in order to differentiate which source am I using exactly according to the date. Like, for example, 73 or 74 or 2004, for example.
This problem is manageable in MLA.
Yeah, I know. The way they text it is by putting the date of the publication within the text. So I saw that since I am using well, to be honest, at the very beginning I used the MLA style, but I saw that since I am using a lot of I'm taking advantage of this exception a lot, so the documentation looked like it's not MLA anymore. Like
okay, it is not forbidden, but it is not preferable. This is the thing. Secondly, as you have chosen to write in the APA, it was supposed to be written in the proper way. For example, you have certain things missed that are supposed to be there or should be written in another way. For example, the block quotes. Okay, you have used block quotes. In the APA, there is no indentation in that.
Can I say something? Comment?
Yes.
A little comment. It's not APA. I used Chicago style, 16th edition.
It is the same.
Well,
Do they in the when whatever style there is no indentation in the block quotes?
You mean indentation before the text?
Yes. Why do you indent?
Well, I kind of saw that in the instructions.
I have checked the APA.
Chicago.
And they do not put brackets in the bibliography, in the work cited. When you put the sources at the end, usually I know that the year is supposed to be between two brackets.
That's APA. Yeah, APA does that.
So it is the Chicago?
It is Chicago style, yes.
But you said that I prefer the APA because it is most proper to mine. We didn't say that it is a Chicago.
No, I'm sorry, I misrepresented my idea. It's Chicago style, not APA, because I was confused between MLA and Chicago, not APA.
Okay.
Since, may I add, since APA is related only to...
So do they in the Chicago style indent the quote?
I found that, yes, in the textbook, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not so much relevant. Okay, let us leave that. Let us go to the epigraphs you have used. It is something very interesting, and it shows that the student is knowledgeable, and he managed to bring things that are related to the content of the chapter he's writing about. However, the way you write them, don't tell me it is a Chicago style. And for that reason, I have written them like that. Because the epigraph everywhere is supposed to have certain rules. Okay? So the epigraph should have the same font like the rest of the thesis. And it is supposed to be indented 2 spaces. And the name of the sayer, the person, the author whom you have quoted from, is supposed to be to the left. And the title of the work you have quoted from is supposed to be also there. But you didn't do all these things. So you have to reconsider them all.
May I just comment on one thing? I really found that interesting because when I was documenting this epigraph I have, epigraphs, more than one.
Yes, for each one. You have done well because you have put them everywhere. Some students make a mistake. They put them in a chapter and they miss them in another one.
Yeah.
But you have done the right thing.
Well, to be honest, I didn't find detailed instructions.
No, these are the details. I'm going to give them to you.
That's what I'm saying.
It is not defecting your thesis, but it is going to add more perfection to it. Okay?
Can I say something?
Yes.
The only instructions I found about this is that it should be as close as possible to the block quotations. This is the only explanation I found for them.
You can Google it. It is there. How to write an epigraph in a thesis, literary thesis. Okay. Concerning your language, your style, I say that your thesis is one of the theses that I have enjoyed too much to read because they rarely have such mistakes that we usually find in many other theses. Most of the time we are busy in correcting the grammar and structure and punctuation. However, there are some, I am not going to refer to them, they are there. I have referred to them with my pencil. Yes, and there are other things concerning. But I have one other thing concerning the style of writing. Mustafa, why do you write so long paragraphs? Paragraphs that goes for 2 pages. Don't you feel tired of such a thing? We felt very tired. You cut our breath.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, comment.
Doctor, it was actually a challenge to cut the big thoughts that I have into smaller paragraphs. Even I know that you're referring to some paragraphs that are
some?
related.
Many.
A lot. Yeah, I know.
17 to 18, 21 to 23, 44 to 45, 72, 81 to 82, 83, 86, 89, 90, 100.
I know.
All of them are about whole page or a page and a half. You are tiring your reader. You have to cut them into pieces, with each one having one topic, major sentence you are talking about.
What if the idea isn't dividable?
I have divided them for you.
Highly appreciated. Learning from the best.
Okay. Now, if we go to your abstract, let us go to the content. I don't want to prolong too much. I know everybody is fasting and we shouldn't prolong too much. But you have written a very good abstract, actually, but you missed something in it. You have talked about everything necessary you referred to, but you never mentioned the approach and the terms you are going to apply. Have you noticed that? In the abstract, you have to have at least a sentence telling your reader what approach you are going to apply in your analysis. You have talked about everything and it is good, but that part is missed. Don't you agree with me?
We're talking about the second part, right?
Yes.
Well, I put like one sentence explaining what am I going to discuss
The
within
theory, the concept should be there.
It's implied. Like, for example, Chapter 2 analyzes Divergent points out how enslavement takes the form of interpolation and idea implanting. Interpolation is like the main concept I'm using in this chapter. And then an insurgent discursive practices that formulate the path to enslavement. I intentionally used these keywords. And in Chapter 4, by highlighting representation of enslavement through constant surveillance and panoptic mechanisms.
I mean the whole approach in general.
I mean for the whole thesis.
What approach have you applied?
Well, it's hard to tell.
This is the point I want to refer to, actually. What usually there is approach we follow in our analysis, but it seems that you have a lot of approaches. So the work is supposed to be taken from an approach. Your study is from this approach. Another study is going to be from another approach. But to mix them all together, don't you feel that you are putting us in a mess?
Well, I thought like linking them together under the theme of enslavement would be enough.
No. Enslavement from which approach? There are different kinds of enslavement. It is okay, you have mentioned them all. You have given a historical background of these terms, how enslavement developed throughout history. This is very wonderful. But finally, after displaying all these approaches and all those theorists, you have to pick up one of them and apply his concepts individually. You cannot apply everyone's concepts.
Are we talking about abstract or Chapter 1 in general?
About the whole thesis.
Got it.
Okay. I'm going to give you an example for that. You have mentioned too many theorists, okay? And their concepts are a lot or so much close to the thing you are analyzing. But can you justify the mention of Edward Said and Orientalism?
Which page?
In the first chapter.
Yeah,
in the first chapter,
theoretical.
actually, yes, there is the...
And did you see the context?
I don't know, because I have read things general, but I have seen that you have referred to him more than once.
Yes.
And his book, Orientalism,
Yes.
do you think that the context of that book is so much close to the works you are dealing with? Is there any features of Orientalism in her works, in the theology, we can apply this on? Enslavement in works that are written about enslaved countries, Middle East, for example, North Africa.
Orientalism 29.
29.
Yes, I have checked it, yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So you have mentioned this. Of course, he is known for his concepts, his theory, But Orientalism and Edward Said and your work, I don't think that they match.
Can I?
Yes, you can.
Well,
We are examining you, so you have to answer.
Thank you.
Please,
According to
Mustafa, do not keep repeating, can I say, can I... no,
You can.
You are here to clarify.
We have
you are
permitted
here
you.
to- yes.
Thank you. According to my context, I'm using how knowledge is not innocent. Yeah, it's like the core analysis of the first chapter. Like in the first chapter, I'm telling how ideologies, how implanting ideologies works. Like it's not like something direct. Like the slaves, or let's say the people who are being enslaved, they don't know that they're enslaved by the means of using the non-innocent knowledge that is mentioned by Edward Said. Like I use it to mix how to link. I think like he is my link from Althusser to the novel, because I can't apply Althusser directly to the novel. Like especially in the second chapter, like the knowledge, the innocent knowledge, how they used it to how not the government, but people in charge, how use the innocent knowledge, the non-innocent knowledge that is defined by Edward Said, how they used it to manipulate the minds of the slaves, telling them that you're inferior, you have to be obedient to us, like as the authority. Like the ideological state apparatus of Althusser itself is not applicable directly to the novel, because it's not. It's like the link is not there. I used Edward Said as the link to link the ideology.
So you should say these things, so that your reader can find a link between this book and this theorist and whatever you are doing. Okay?
Doctor, it's there. Like in the previous paragraph, I said that to explain how and why the list of institutions mentioned are formally outside the control of the state. And then I go on talking about Althusser to remind the reader about.
Yes.
I believe that Dr. Azhar's point is that how can you relate East-West, this binary,
this is the thing I'm
this
just
binary
talking
to
about.
the analysis of the novel. We have, for example, those in power and slaves, okay? But how can you, because you are talking about West as scientifically developed, as superior, and the East as inferior and backward and so on. How can you relate this part of Edward Said's Orientalism or concept of the relationship between East and West to the analysis of the novel?
I get that point, but that's not applicable to my analysis, because what I'm trying to say here is that they're all the same. Althusser is not different from Edward Said in his theorization. When he speaks, when he's speaking about theories, how he, let's say, not theorize, but when he's speaking about people in power, he's like not copying, but he's speaking as exactly as Althusser. Edward Said and Althusser are talking about the same thing. I didn't consider them as binary opposites. Yes, I took the East and the West, the Occident and the Orient from Edward Said, but I didn't mean to put Edward Said in a corner against Althusser. I used it, yes, I used Orientalism, but not against Althusser, but against people in power in general.
Okay. Let us go to your chapter 1. You have given chapter 1 theoretical framework. Is it proper to start with a theoretical background? Framework, sorry. Where is your introduction?
Actually, choosing the titles was like really challenging, because chapter 1 is like talking about a lot of things. Theoretical framework, historical background, introduction,
right.
Literature review,
okay,
all of that.
So usually it is giving an introduction title, not theoretical framework. Because when you say theoretical framework, you are supposed to stick to the theoretical framework. But we have found historical overview, we have found literature review of the... So the title should give reference to what is in the content. Okay? So I don't think that theoretical framework is suitable title for chapter 1. Because it is not a general one. It does not include whatever you have indicated. You have put or write that.
Well, I intended to make like distinction between the first and the last three. Like I wanted to show them as two parts.
But it is not your choice. There are rules, regulations. First chapter should supposed to be a general thing that includes everything that is related, in which you are going to prepare your readers to what you are going to do. Historical background, an overview over the writer, for example, background about the writer, his works, the theoretical framework, and all these things are under the umbrella of the introduction. So you cannot have the freedom to choose titles because you want to. I know that you are a distinguished student, and I know that you want to make your thesis a unique one, but there are regulations. Okay?
Can I hear suggestions?
Yes.
About chapter 1? Like the title?
Yes. Introduction.
Just that?
Yes.
Introduction?
Just like that. Simply like that.
How can I distinguish it from like the preliminary notes that I have in the analysis?
Or enslavement.
This is introduction to the whole thing. Check all theses all over the world. All of them starts with introduction. Books starts with introduction. Right? Now, if we go again to your chapter 1, the theology and literature review. What is literature review? I want you to define for me literature review.
Okay. Well, literature review is like the section in which we speak about what has been written. We are reviewing what has been written about this work or this study in general, if not specifically this work.
Okay. So, who wrote these things? Who wrote whatever is written about the theology?
Previous researchers?
Exactly, very good. Now, Mustapha, suppose I want to write an article. I am your instructor and I was fascinated with your work and I want to write an article concerning certain aspect in these novels. And I want to apply some of your work, some quotes or something like that, in the article I'm going to write. Okay? Do you agree that I'm going to miss your name and just say a study had been conducted about this theology and it dealt with so and so and so without mentioning your name, Mustapha?
That would be fair because I've done the same.
Sorry?
I mean, that would be fair because I've done the same to these people. But I thought that it's enough to just cite them, like the citation at the end with the last name. I thought that would be enough. I have those after each paragraph.
Usually, literature review is supposed to have the name of the person who conducted the study and the title of the study. And most of the time, you are interested in the year. Even the year is not mentioned. Huh, Mustapha?
Well, that's because I introduced to something like that. I said that it's
now,
like...
if you look at your literature review, all this literature review, all these pages do not mention once any name of those authors. These are studies conducted. They have their importance. You depended on them in writing your thesis. So they have the right to be mentioned.
Like by the name of the
last
author
name,
and
the title of the work. How can we know what is there if the title is a clue to what this research is about. Okay?
Noted.
Now, if we go to page 24, now in page 23, we forgot. Okay, you talked about the history of enslavement in the classics, and suddenly we jumped from the classics to the 17th century. Wasn't there any enslavement in between?
That's actually the point of my whole historical review, because I'm talking about the times in which enslavement was not represented as enslavement. Because between those ancient times and the 17th century, it was all there with the chains and the handcuffs It was
So it
already
remained
there.
like that till the 17th century.
Almost, yeah, by the colonialism and other titles
Okay.
that it had.
Now, in page 23, the last paragraph, as demonstrated in the previous examples, the repressive sort of enslavement is usually accepted, however, not exclusively, for it can be implicit as well as hide behind the layers and terminologies of both conflict theory and structural functionalism. Now, you are talking about old enslavement, and as if the new enslavement only showed or referred to the social distinction. Wasn't there such a thing in the old enslavement? Wasn't sensed by the people that there are two classes, people who are masters and others who are servants?
It was, but it was like a matter of fact. I'm trying to shed the light on something that is not distinguished, because if I can go on and on talking about enslavement that is known.
Okay.
Like, as a matter of fact, enslavement in how it started, how it developed from, like, how it developed under the name of slavery. What I'm trying to mention here is that it is enslavement, but it's not slavery as we know it. Or at least it's not defined as slavery. Like, for example, when you talk about the conflict theory and the structural functionalism and the example that I put about the bus company, if you talk about it to any sane person about it, nobody would ever say that it is enslavement.
By the way, Mustapha, I have read something very interesting in your thesis. You talked about the Egyptians slaves and how they enjoyed to be enslaved.
Yeah, ironically,
because they were paid, maybe, or given good meals.
Not necessarily paid, but they didn't have to pay debts anymore because they're slaves and their master had to pay the debts.
Mm-hmm. Now, on page 40, if you can open that page. You are talking in the second paragraph, which starts with seeing. The last, let us say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, last 6 from paragraph 2. Have you found it? The one starts with hence.
Yeah.
Okay. Hence, the definition and the classification of people in their rightful places aims at gaining control of them and even eventually enslave them. According to this image that the individual got along with, they would willingly announce that in our function we find meaning, we find purpose, we find life, assuming that this is the best life they could find by having the reasons of their living associated with the function system. So the function system categorized people according to their talent or their skills or their abilities. Personalities, exactly. So they divided them into groups in order to control them easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Now, you say in Divergent, functions are social divisions that categorize citizens according to their values, etc., to support the idea of labeling individuals. My question is, are you with labeling individuals or against it?
I'm against it, but we can't escape it.
Do you think it is more successful to label people or to leave them randomly among each other?
Well,
are you with the idea of labeling them or against?
Well, that's a trick question, because if I said against labeling them, I would be an anarchist. It's not, labeling them would has its own benefits and advantages and disadvantages.
Question, were they wrong in doing this thing?
The way they did it, yes. But in general, no. It is a harmless deed, we can say.
Yes,
Labeling
I think it's
people.
better to label people, good people, bad people, working people, and lazy people. Yes.
Well, the way they did it, I didn't mean like only factions, but factions versus factionless. Because in the factionless, they represented Edward Said, the way he said that we are whatever they are not. They are educated, hence we are the illiterate. They are brave.
Lower.
Exactly, yeah.
Intellectual, civilized, and primitive.
Exactly. This is what I meant by labeling
uncultivated.
people. Yeah, exactly that.
Okay.
So only telling them that you are workers, you are like managers, you are students, that would be harmless because people know that already. But what I meant here is that casting people out of the faction system under the labeling. They would know that they are the factionless because a label, because like a word, only a word that can to stick on their necks.
Okay, Mustafa. Thank you. Now, Mustafa, sometimes I found that the integration between the quotes and your own style fails. In some points, I have referred to them. You can check them in my copy. You have to be more clear in the integration, because sometimes there is the mixing between the he talker and he, I, etc. As if you are there in the discussion, not the characters. Okay? Let us go to page 42. You are talking about the ceremony of choosing those teenagers. Yes, teenagers. And you talked about the visiting day, but you stopped you didn't continue what is going to happen in the visiting day, and you didn't continue it only on page 64. That was the continuation. So the idea is cut here and continued elsewhere when you needed to talk about the visiting day. Okay? You are talking about the ceremony, and you mentioned that there is a visiting day. Okay? Now, usually, I expected that I'm going to find in the second page what is going to happen in the visiting, or what happened in the visiting day. But I didn't find that unless on page 64.
Well, Doctor, I found that telling the story is not like irrelevant. I took like only the important part that I needed in my discussion. I talked here about the Stockholm Syndrome. If you see like this long quotation that I have at the bottom of the page at page 42, it's like it's like a mere representation of the Stockholm Syndrome. They want to prevent them because, and I don't exactly remember where, but I used that Stockholm Syndrome to relate back to the slave revolt and the proletarian revolution. So this is related not to the visiting day itself, but to the Stockholm Syndrome.
But it is an event. It's supposed to be explained as a whole. Then you say, when you are going to mention the visiting day, everybody is going to know or know already what happens in the visiting day. Anyhow, now concerning the integration, if you look at the same page, by the mid stages of initiation, the transferers are allowed to see their families on an annual event called the visiting day. You are talking, a third person, about the thing. If your families, this is what I refer to in the integration. Okay?
Right.
And there are many things like that. You can check them later on.
Well, Doctor, just like to say something about this.
Yes.
I didn't want to like say that these are the orders that were given to the initiates because like I thought it's a given because when I'm talking about.
But there are more. Sometimes it is causing ambiguity.
It needs to be talked about.
Yes,
yes.
Okay. Now, how much time I have left for me?
All of us.
Yes, okay. I'm going to hurry up. Now, page 89. I hurry up a little bit. I have left a lot of things I want to discuss with you actually later on. Okay? The mid of this very long paragraph, an example of the long paragraphs. Nearly the mid, when there is the bracket with 110, with such mentality and determination, the article that defines subalterns of Spivak becomes debatable. Okay? You are referring to whom?
That's Spivak.
Okay? She states so and so and so and so. Right? Where is her article in your sources. I went and searched for it. I was interested. I wanted to read that article. I wanted to Google it and find it so I can have a look at it. But unfortunately, it is not there. Why, Mustafa?
Well, Doctor, I have an explanation for this.
Always having explanations, yes.
This, like, you hit like my STEM paper, بحث المستل. Like, this is my STEM paper. I talked about how inaudible people can become audible or can be heard, but according to Spivak's article. So I explained it and quoted a lot from Spivak's article in my paper. So I didn't see that it's necessary because...
No, Mustafa, you misunderstand me. The author, Spivak, her article, her work is not there in your...
I didn't quote it here, yes, because it was not...
But you have referred to it. You have referred to the ideas. You have summarized. You have paraphrased. How can you... How did you miss her? How did you escape her? She is mentioned more than once. And here you are analyzing, you are paraphrasing and summarizing. It is a sword that is used. So, are you going to disform your thesis because you have published an article you have mentioned her too many times in it?
Well,
it has to be mentioned in your sources.
Is it acceptable to integrate like from my STEM paper? Because I give it its due.
Are you going to give the title and your name there?
Is it possible? Because it's already published. No, I didn't mean like
I'm not talking about your paper. I'm talking about your thesis. Your thesis referred to Spivak more than once in your introduction. Here you are paraphrasing things from her article, and you are depending on her in your analysis. So she has the right to be mentioned in the sources. Okay? Now, I'm not going to take too much time. Mustafa, I have the last thing I want to ask you about. What made you interested in this trilogy? Yes, these three books.
Well, I read it like 2 years before graduation, from like when I was still undergraduate. I read it like right, the timing was important. I read it right after I read 1984 for George Orwell. I felt like this is the modern version of 1984 of George Orwell. Like it's like the same. It's talking about our society, how our society. I mean, even here in Iraq, not necessarily in Middle East or in like in world in general. It's talking about things we can relate so closely to our lives. So I need to talk about that. So then when
she has used science fiction genre in order to talk about something related to our life, political situation of a lot of countries all over the world. Don't you think that each book of this trilogy talks about a certain phase of political world? For example, the first revolution was against the personalities. The first revolution was against monarchies. When they put down all kings and emperors and such things, because the personality of the leader was supposed to be representative of God on earth. But if you even look at the way they treated them, they killed them. They didn't leave them. Then came the reign of those who were intellectuals.
True.
Right? And finally, there is the third stage. Now, another observation, last one. I always say the last one, then I remember another thing because I like to discuss too much with you. I haven't seen so much mentioning of what is happening to the protagonists. They are rarely mentioned. From time to time, there is a hint. She did this, he did that. But most of the time, they are not there. You are talking in general situation. But what happened to them, finally? At the end of the trilogy, we have to know. After all that struggle.
Yeah, but they're like, I feel like they're they're not even included within this fight. Even
Why?
the fight against the Divergent, they led it. They led the escape. I think in the events between
What
the
was
second-
their role if they are the protagonists? Didn't they have role?
They had roles, but not according to enslavement. I mean, to my topic, they weren't like the representatives of this enslavement.
So what made them Beatrice? And I think
Beatrice and Ford.
Beatrice and Ford. What made them revolt? How they were different from the others?
They didn't fit to this.
Are they the narrators in the novel?
Yeah.
So
They
how
are.
they are not involved in the enslavement? They are part of the enslavement. Weren't they categorized? Weren't they taken away from their families and put in other groups that are different from them?
But not alone. I mean,
They are part of the
nothing
society.
like individually was directed toward them.
Mm-hmm.
They were like part of the group, part of the crowd. That's why I talked in general, because they didn't have something so unique to distinguish them
Okay.
as the recipients of this enslavement.
Mustafa, last two short observations. Your second chapter, the first analysis of the first theology, has a very excellent conclusion. You come out to the conclusion, right? This conclusion is missed in chapter 3 and chapter 4. Moreover, you have done something that is usually not acceptable, because you didn't give chapter 4 the length supposed to be. You have devoted too much time and effort. Did you feel tired and decided to quit suddenly?
Well,
So you didn't give it its proper devotion?
it's not like precisely like that. But when it comes to like the fourth analysis, the fourth chapter, my analysis with Foucault and surveillance, it's like already there. It's like really hard to state the obvious. It's like when I included them within the appendices, I even like killed the chance for myself to talk about the surveillance mechanisms and the panopticon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like already there. Even in the end of the analysis, the theoretical part, I talked about the surveillance and panopticon. It was like really difficult because the first two were like not there. I had a lot to talk about, but when it came to panopticon, it was already there. It was applied, it was defined, and it was even applied on other works. And to be fair, a lot of works took Divergent trilogy from only the panopticon point of view. Like I had very little room to talk about, in order not to copy them or like cancel their analysis, which was not cancelable to be honest, because it was good.
Okay, Mustafa, finally, I'm going to say my last word. As I have said at the beginning, your thesis is one of the most interesting theses I have ever read. It shows so much concern, hard work, effort, and it is really a contribution to the field of study. It shows your how knowledgeable you are. It also reflects the effort of your supervisor in instructing you to be in the right path, let us say, in writing such a good, wonderful thesis. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Azhar, for these illuminating points. I'm sure that Mustafa will make full use of them, and not only in, for example, improving his thesis, but in his future career as a researcher. And I totally agree with her on all the points she raised and discussed with you, specifically concerning Spivak, because I hear from page 86, 87, 89, you are talking about and you equate the factionless with the subaltern of Spivak, but without documenting, without referring to the original article. So please add it, as Dr. Azhar has asked you to do your work cited. Okay. Now the floor is Dr. Asma. So I'm sure that she has more points to discuss with you. Listen to her and try to answer them.
Thank you very much, Diora. Well, first of all, I want to welcome all the guests here today. Wish the scholar all the best. And I think that he has exerted a great much effort in writing his paper, Mustapha. Actually, I've read your thesis, and I was glad to be reunited here with Dr. Amar because I've worked with him for a long years, and he is my dearest colleague. I guess you are lucky because you've written your paper under his supervision.
Indeed.
I'm sure that your paper is almost free of mistakes, but I have many things to share with Dr. Azhar, as she mentioned earlier, Mustafa. She came across all the questions that I wanted to ask. First of all, why did you use the APA style? Chicago style. Whatsoever, yes, but not the familiar style that we as a literature writers use usually. I want to start from the very beginning with the abstract, because Dr. Azhar pinpoint everything mainly. The first two lines, the earliest notions of enslavement, denote the way property law covered people. This coverage means that people could be owned as. What do you mean by covered coverage? Why did you use this?
Like
what covered? What? The earliest notion of enslavement denoted the way property law covered people?
I didn't want to use the term dominate because it's like the most relevant of what I'm talking about.
But covered, is it, and does it fit here, covered people?
He has some word usages.
Yes, I guess you are missing
matter of word
shades
usage.
of meaning عندك شوية. I don't know if Dr. Amar has something to say about this. The earliest notion of enslavement denotes the way property law covered people. I don't know how do they cover people. This coverage means that people could be owned as a property, and the first two lines.
Prof, can I? It's like what I want to say. Away from domination, it was like something temporary. It's not.
I know you mean domination.
Yeah,
I know.
But it wasn't domination
is
because.
Is it workable here? This is my point. I'm speaking grammatically.
Because it wasn't like actual law. It was what people agreed upon. It wasn't even a law because law was defined like not so long ago.
No, covered. Okay, the second paragraph. This study investigates the flexibility of modern day enslavement and the varying representations, varying or varied representations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is the difference between the old notion of enslavement, Mustafa, and the new notion? This is different. You left me with certain questions after completing this thesis. And the first one, I want to ask, why did Veronica Ruth write about enslavement in the modern age? She's American. The country of human rights. Why would she tackle enslavement? Every writer, he is the product of his time and age. She doesn't write anything from vacuum. There should be reasons for writing these things. Why?
Actually, I heard a suggestion from one of the professors. He said, why didn't you include the author's life within the work? Because nothing can come out of nowhere.
Yes, this is my point. Why?
Right? But when
this is risky. You are talking about enslavement in the modern age, the age of human rights, the women emancipated. Why? And what is the difference between the old notion and the new notion of enslavement?
Well, that's the core of my study, because the old notion was when enslavement was with the chains and the handcuffs, where everybody knew that this is enslavement. Even the slave himself knew that he is being enslaved.
Oh, okay.
And the new notion, it was implied by other means, because as I mentioned in one of the pages, it was stood against.
Stood against. Okay, is it enslavement or exploitation, Mustafa?
Both, because exploitation is one of the characteristics of old day enslavement.
Okay.
So in order to continue its work, it had to. Well, I don't want to get into this argument actually, because according to the theory of evolution, it says that if you don't adjust, if snakes do not shed their skin, they die. So
Okay.
even enslavement, if it didn't want to shed its skin and appear in a new form or in a new acceptable form by its surroundings, it would die, it would vanish. So
Okay.
it is natural, something, let's say, evolutionary. Since it's everywhere, enslavement is no exception.
Okay, I want to read with you the acknowledgement, please. See, the third paragraph, I extend my thanks to Muhammad Abbas and Safa Salah for sharing me their brilliant psychological minds. Sharing me their brilliant psychological minds. What do you mean by that? They share their minds with you?
Literally.
Yes. Even before
I mean figuratively, not literally, because we sat for long hours. I didn't know where to start.
Yes.
I didn't know where to start. So they like showed me the path, whether this is relatable in psychology. I wanted to start it with existentialism, and existentialism, according to their studies, like the main thing over there.
Yes, no, I'm not asking about their main field. I'm speaking about this sentence. That nobody shares his mind with the other. His mind, his ideas probably. I guess.
This can be like a flaw in the translation, because like we have it in Arabic, it's acceptable, but in English it's not.
Arabic.
Yes.
This is Arabic.
Arabic?
Hybrid. Okay. Again, the third paragraph, the last two lines. Department of Psychology who helped fetch me Dr. Salman Gayoush, the straightforward giant of department. You should be very objective in judging a giant.
Personalizing.
Right?
He's personalizing it.
I don't think that this is exaggeration, because like for like I think 2 months.
You are using also literary words. Okay.
Prof, just comment on Dr. Salman. For 2 months I've been lost, not knowing what to do, because like they helped me a lot. A lot of people from Department of Psychology, since I want to start my study with psychology, they helped me a lot, but the one who anchored all my inquiries and like made me leave psychology behind and turn to other methods was Dr. Salman Gayoush.
Yeah, you may thank him in another way. Okay. In chapter 1, please, Mustafa. As Dr. Azhar mentioned earlier, the theatrical background. I mean, you talked about Hegel, Foucault, Edward Said, Orientalism, Derrida, Jacques Derrida, but I didn't see those brilliant names in chapter 1. Okay, in chapter 2, you applied, you say that Foucault, you mentioned Michel Foucault, but you didn't use Hegel. You didn't come across Spivak. Spivak is there, but Hegel is absent. Hegel is mentioned in your chapter 1, the theatrical framework, excessively, but it's not mentioned there. And since you are talking about enslavement, where is Frantz Fanon? Are you familiar with Frantz Fanon?
The post-colonial.
In order to talk about enslavement, you have to refer how do those people were enslaved? In what sense? Why? In what terms?
Well, from my humble readings of Frantz Fanon, his analysis is irrelevant to my discussion, because there's no discrimination, there's no actual colonialism.
But he spoke about inferiority complex. In order to enslave any certain people, you have to plant deep inside his mind the idea of inferiority complex, that he's inferior and you are superior, and he won't be improved only when he's going to be in touch with the superior people, right?
According to Edward Said, yes.
Edward Said, the Fanon.
No, I saw that the Saidian approach was more relevant to my analysis than Frantz Fanon.
Okay, how did they plant the inferiority complex deep inside the mind of your protagonist here?
Innocent knowledge.
The innocent knowledge.
According to Edward Said.
According to Edward Said, that those people were what?
Whatever their masters are not. And I quote.
Whatever their masters are not. Okay. In page 2, Hegel indicates please, I kindly ask you to write the second paragraph. Hegel indicates that the master is in need of the slave. At the same time, he dominates his slave. In other words, there is no master if there were no slaves. And the case of no slaves means that there is nothing to be mastered. The conflict between master and slave can last forever. Why can last forever?
Because if there is no master, there is no slave. If there is no slave, there is no master. And the master is, according to Hegel, is... I'm not saying my own words, by the way.
Yes.
According to Hegel, he says that the master is actually the slave of his slave, not vice versa. Because he's dependent to some extent on his slave, that if the slave goes away, he doesn't know what to do.
Okay. But do those characters in the contemporary time or modern time accepted their enslavement, Mustafa?
That's the point. They didn't know that they are enslaved.
Unconsciously.
Unconsciously, yeah.
Okay. You used also Blake, William Blake London. I don't know whether it is relevant. Nietzsche is there also.
I want to comment about Hegel, why I didn't use his analysis in the second and the third chapters. Because he's like the very beginning. He's the point from which I...
No, even in the first chapter, you didn't mention Hegel. I mean, in the first, I will come across the first chapter. I didn't see any critical, any theoretical, but in the first chapter. I've seen in the second novel, I've seen that you depended mainly on Foucault. But the first one, I think there's a lack in the theoretical background.
It's Althusserien, like the main distinction between the state apparatus and how I managed to put a lot of concepts into old school enslavement, as I named it, and the modern day enslavement.
Yes.
Those are like Althusserien concepts. Althusserien, the ISA and the RSA, the ideological state apparatus and the repressive state apparatus. But this is all,
yes.
This is given the introduction to chapter 2, which is not, we can't say 100%, but the major name there is Althusser, since it's interpolation, and interpolation was defined by Althusser.
Okay, Mustafa, how would you classify your thesis? Is it modern, postmodern, colonial, post-colonial?
That's actually the main reason why I didn't use the theory names. If you notice that I didn't, no, it's like not vast, but I didn't use names. I didn't say the post-colonial theorist. I didn't say the postmodernist or the postmodern theorist, right? I just used names because
But I guess it's wide.
Yeah, I'm giving the explanation. Yeah, because I didn't like excuse my bravery because I'm gonna be punished for that.
Okay. Feel free to say anything.
I'm against those labelings. I see like all of them are everywhere, especially those who are hybrid from one to another theory. They are relevant. They are theorizing in more than one theory.
Okay.
So I can't classify my work because I can't classify any one of those people who I'm talking about.
But I think you should be more precise and concise, I think, to the best of my knowledge. Mustafa, in page 4, considering the phenomena of purpose, the thematic of the trilogy is one inclined to highlight the very wording of the author, trilogy Veronica Ruth, who states people are innately in war with each other. What do you mean by innately?
From birth, like by nature?
By nature, in war with each other? She states that, Veronica herself?
Yeah, in an interview.
Why would she say so? I mean, since kindergarten, this is since infancy, very early.
I'm justifying. I'm justifying from the words of the author. I'm saying that well, I know it's not my job to justify why people are fighting each other, but it was like it felt so right to talk about it like here.
Okay. On page 7, the last 6 or 7 lines. Divergent, one can relate and demonstrate how both implicit and explicit enslavement is embodied in real life. Yes, I want you to explain that in real life.
I had a quote actually. Yeah, like right here. See, it says some pieces of writing come in accordance with the assumption that literature is a window to real life. Like,
yes, it's a window to real life. You are talking about the embodiment of real life. I want to see that the embodiment of real life in your theology.
of enslavement or
Yes.
the events?
Yes, no enslavement.
Enslavement, well, if my analysis was accurate and I hit, let's say, hit the bullseye by saying that the enslavement is the way I said it, then we can relate that to the social classes, social discriminations, and the way government rules people, and the way government is being overpowered and overruled by the rebellions, which is happening like constantly. We can't even say that it started here and ended here. Even here, we have it like right now, the government that comes, it
Yes,
enslaves
here.
the
Here,
previous
yes.
government and the one that preceded them.
Okay, in page 9, please, I can ask you to check page 9. In the middle of the page, you say the brave new world and divergent caste citizens who are unaware of the limitations imposed upon their social organization. Limitations imposed upon their social organization. Veronica talking about the limitation in the society.
Implicitly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because when at the very beginning, when we said that they are imposing names, they are giving terminology, they are categorizing people. Well, this categorization resulted. One of the disadvantages of this categorization was that they can't mix from, like, for example, right now I'm a literature student, right? I can like go freely and talk to students of linguistics and ELT, right? But according to Divergent, they were prohibited to do that, to do so. Only on specific days of the year, they could see their relatives, their kins, and their parents from other factions, and the rest of the year, they are like imprisoned in such a way that they are not allowed to communicate with people from other factions.
Okay, but why would Veronica Ruth write such a thing? Mustafa, once when she wrote this trilogy, why did she tackle these themes?
Well, I have an assumption, I have a theory about that, because
are these things exist really in their society?
It could be, yeah, and not as explicit as in our societies, but I said that something in my proposal. I didn't see that it's relevant here. I said that enslavement in the past is tackled, enslavement of the present is being tackled a lot. I think she's not talking about right now, she's talking about the future. She's saying that like 100 years from now, not necessarily giving names, not necessarily giving dates. I think she's trying to say that in 100 years from now, the same things that has been going on and on about power impositions and dispositions is going to happen again and again, on and on.
To be recycled again. Okay. Can you explain the panoptic world briefly, Mustafa?
According to Foucault or Divergent?
Divergent.
Well, at the
okay, Foucault and Divergent. I have no problem with the application of Foucault.
Well, the panopticon is this circular prison that has the tower in the middle that observes without being observed. That the prisoners do not know that they are being observed, whether they are being observed or not. Okay, so since they are not being aware whether they are being observed or not, it happened in the first chapter, in the first book of the trilogy.
Yes.
The whole book, they had no idea that they are being observed. When they, actually even the second one, the whole 2 books, they didn't know that they are being observed. When they moved to the third book, they went outside the prison, or the Chicago. They had these towers that even I quoted it in one of the hero said it, that I saw towers. I do not know why they reminded me of the control rooms. The control rooms, as if this is the panoptic tower through which the people in power are constantly observing without being watched, the Chicago city. And indeed, even when they got back to the city, people of the city did not know that they are being observed.
Did she choose the Chicago City haphazardly, or she intentionally chose the Chicago City?
Well,
Veronica.
I don't know if it's like an something studied, but this is the place where she grew up. In one of the interviews, she was asked why specifically Chicago, and even in the movie, she took scenes from the places that she grew up in, not places like random places. So her comment was that I talk about the place that I grew up in because I know it the best, and I know its corners. I think she said I know its corners and I know its pits. Like I'm quoting her words.
Okay, Mustafa, on page 11, I'll come across everything now quickly. On page 11, please, the first chapter, the last 2 lines, illustrated with concentration on the repressive ideological agenda that is presented by the trilogy. What agenda you are talking about? Which is characterized by the reinforcing certain social order of identity. I mean, agenda, we are all over the word agenda is used. What agenda?
Methodologies, I think. It's not it's
what
like
agenda that is presented?
it's not written, but it's like a course on which they're walking. We can see that in the repressive ideological state that is there.
Okay. Later, the second paragraph, later that year, hegemony was thoroughly discussed in another study as, hegemony. This is post-colonial. Hegemony, post-colonialism. Later that year, hegemony was thoroughly discussed in another study as a contextual method reading of Divergent. Can you explain hegemony in this in Divergent?
Well, it's there, yeah. I didn't take it because it's like there.
How?
Power domination.
Power domination.
And
then, okay, when you mention hegemony, okay, at least you have to pinpoint it in your novel.
I didn't because like this study like gave it its due, so I didn't want to copy it.
This is what Dr. had said. The theatrical background شوية يعني confusing a little bit.
Do you suggest like I
Marxism, you are talking about Marxist, and Marxism, and it's not there also absent.
No, origin, Doctor. It's the origin of these theories.
The original, yes, the origin. But also it's يعني only in the literature review.
Doctora, can I add something?
Yes.
Like I'm talking about things here that I didn't mention. I'm not talking about things that I mentioned. Like for example, this study, and even the study after that, I'm saying that it gave its due. I talked about a little in comparison to this study. My study was like very little, like very far-fetched from Marxism. Like I talked about 1 or 2 concepts, maybe 3, but this study took it like all. I even remember its conclusion. Even in the conclusion, each one of the paragraphs discussed one of the concepts of Marxism. So I felt that there's no need. I'm just saying that it's there, and I acknowledge their contributions, and let's say my study departs their study from 1, 2, 3, and so on.
Yes, but feminism, for example, page 15, similarly social feminist and existentialist. Okay, many theories are mentioned here in the literature review, but I saw that they were absent in the analysis. Mustafa, I also have something to add in page 16. The ambivalence of enslavement. It is possible today to anatomize enslavement?
Yes.
Yani, what do you mean?
From the word anatomy? Like,
anatomize it.
Put it in a clinic. Imagine it. Put it in a clinic.
Scrutinize, you mean?
Huh?
You mean scrutinize it?
Scrutinize isn't related to anatomy.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and that too.
Actually, I have a question, Mustafa. Did the enslaved people in the trilogy gain their freedom?
They were given the illusion of freedom at the very end.
They were what?
Given the illusion of freedom.
The illusion of freedom?
Because
but not freedom.
Yeah, but not freedom itself.
Okay.
Well, it's a controversial thing. What is freedom? Because what we think freedom is like right now might not be what freedom is. Because even they, when they left their city, they wanted to come back to the city and live under the supervision and surveillance.
So they enjoy it.
Not that they enjoy it, but it's like their comfort zone.
Okay, and page 57.
Before that, can I say something about
Yes,
anatomize?
you may.
Because I use this terminology because if you have come across this book of Foucault, the birth of the clinic, away from politics, this he talks about clinic and how clinics become, you know, anatomizing subjects. So I wanted to like make a comparison, not comparison, but saying that this, what I'm trying to do here is what Foucault tried to talk about in his Birth of the Clinic. Clinic, it's like, I meant it, clinic.
Yes, clinic. And page 57, Mustafa, you've used the word Oedipus Rex. If enslavement opposes a free will, and just like in Oedipus Rex, when the opposition of free will equals, can you just compare between Oedipus Rex and your study? Why did you mention it?
Because I
Why
thought like,
Oedipus Rex?
the best representative of sight. Because what I was trying to say here, like when I was reading and analyzing this part of the novel, it reminded me of Oedipus Rex because he couldn't see, as you can see, Beatrice says here, she emphasizes, Tobias, please see me, as if he was deprived from his sight, not his sense, not his, let's say, sensation, not anything else, not his intellectuals, but what he was deprived of was his sight. It's like identical to what happened in Oedipus Rex, like
To those enslaved people.
to those enslaved people. I'm trying to say that as let's say Tobias as a representative of those who are deprived from their sight, like I can say that everybody is deprived from his sight within this enslavement. They do not see what is in front of them.
And those people were fated and destined just like Oedipus Rex. They were deprived of their free will. Okay, in page 94, Mustafa, the first line, it indicates that you belong to a particular culture. The first line, 94 please. It indicates that you belong to a particular culture and the faction system provided full time of hearing someone. What particular culture?
I'm talking about the tribal motive, actually, the one I discussed at the very beginning.
Yes, the tribal motors you've talked
Yeah,
about.
whether you're with us or against us. If you're with us, like the particular culture is that the us. Like for example, my culture. When I say us, I mean my culture. When, for example, you say us, you mean your own culture. So this particular culture, according to the interview of Veronica Roth, is like the us from the tribal motto. Even when and she adds, she says that it makes you how it comforts you when hearing someone else speak your own language. They don't have this speaking different languages in the trilogy, but she's trying to say that culture as language, if it's not understood, it's not understood just like the language is not understood. Like the culture itself, you can talk like I can talk like on and on about my own culture, but if the one in front of me, the recipient of my speech, did not value or did not appreciate my culture, it's as if I'm talking another language. He doesn't understand my language.
He doesn't understand you. Okay. I guess I'm done with my questions. Of course, you've done a great job, Mustafa. Wish you all the best. But still, I do agree with Dr. Azhar upon many things. The APA style, the theatrical background. I hope we are going to see how to deal with these things. Thank you very much.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
At the very beginning, you said that my thesis, when you're reading it, it left you with a lot of questions.
Yes, the first and the urgent question is the enslavement itself nowadays in America, the country of human rights. I mean, this is I saw as if you're tackling a risky topic. And why would she tackle this enslavement? Veronica Ruth herself, there should be a reason for this, Mustapha.
It could be like even in Animal Farm for George Orwell. I keep going back to George Orwell because he's the best representative of what I'm trying to say. When he wrote Animal Farm, he said a fairy tale. He couldn't write it like a story that is addressing people, because the political situation at that time, it was high.
Because they had a political turmoil at that time, but right now America is stable. Why would she write such a thing?
She could be addressing the instability from the inside.
Right.
She even couldn't defend it in the interviews. She couldn't say something about that because that would make her a target.
Yes. Okay.
It's full of gangsters.
Gangsters, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, I would like to thank Dr. Asma for these very useful points she raised and discusses with Mustapha. Now is my turn. Of course, Dr. Ashar and Dr. Asma, thank for them. They cover many points. I again write them down, and I would like to ask you, but you answer most of them. The last, the question about enslavement. Enslavement is never absent till now in contemporary time, and there are new types of enslavement. Enslavement. Even in Europe, for example, I watch reports about enslaving of immigrants in farms in Germany, in Italy, for example. We have sex enslavements nowadays, for example. We have many work enslavement in China. They are talking about work conditions in the factories and in the offices of some countries, and they compare it to a kind of, let's say, new system of enslaving people and enslavement. I have more points, to talk about. Of course, it is to Mustapha's credit that he deals with a considerable number of concepts, terms, let's say, ideas in his thesis, like power and authority, because I believe the personal is political after all. Everything is related to politics, and here we are talking about politics from the beginning till the end. We are talking about those in power, and how do they use measures, procedures, specifically policing procedures to control and dominate, others. Now, we are talking about society of discipline and control, domination and mastery, panopticism, as we say, hegemony or hegemony, subaltern, alienation, class struggle, historical materialism, Althusser, of course, ontology, false consciousness, biopower, environment of closure, gay surveillance, and how many. However, Mustafa, while you move from one chapter to another, you tend to forget some of these, and of course there are many others. For example, in terms of binaries, we have enslavement and freedom, conformity and non-conformity, because we are talking all the time about people who try to move from one faction to another because they do not fit this faction. We have herd mentality versus individualism. We have self versus other, compliant, non-compliant, otherness. We have west and east, how many. Now, but when you move to other chapters, you forget some of these and you focus on, let's say, a very limited number of concepts and ideas. I'll give you a clear example. For example, points raised about Hegel. In the first, page 9, for example, page 2, chapter 1. This is only one example. Would you kindly read the second paragraph, Mustafa? Hegel indicates that the master...
Hegel indicates that the master is in need of the slave. At the same time, he dominates the slave. In other words, there is no master if there were no slaves. And the
Okay.
case of no slaves means that there is nothing to be the master of. The conflict between master and slave can last forever. The master would try every way to dominate and profit from the slave, and the slave would be finding ways to use the dependency of the master to relieve their suffering and impose costs on his master. Hegel's proposition concluded with a synthesis for the two opposites as a resolution. He presents a solution for the endless conflict between the master and the slave by overcoming the relationship with a worker cooperative.
Okay.
And that
That makes
the worker both the employer and the employee. This cooperative puts the worker within the endless relationship of dependency against each other. I mean workers.
Okay.
With the endless relationship of dependency against each other without them recognizing that they are locked in a relationship in the first place.
Okay, and now the question is, this is synthesis suggested by Hegel. Was it applied in your thesis in the discussion of the chapters of the parts of the teleology?
I think yes.
You think yes?
Yes.
And was it workable? Was it successful, for example? Because all the time you are talking about masters, about slaves, those in power, those who are powerless, and so on. This synthesis, it is in the second page, okay, and the theoretical background of your thesis. Was it workable? Was it applied? You say yes. But go to the conclusion. No. You state many ideas. The problem I find in reading your thesis, interesting though, very interesting indeed. But I find that somehow you missed the point. Somehow in your discussion, okay, running on discussion of ideas, the thread you lost, the main thread that unites your. Look at page 122, the last paragraph, finally. You say finally within all parts. Mustafa, read please.
Finally, within all parts of the trilogy, the categorization is explicit, yet each part emphasizes a specific labeling.
Okay.
Therefore, it is seen through each one of these of the analyses that labeling improves the performance of power within all its aspects. In addition, Hegel's synthetic misconception has been resolved through the analysis. Enslavement underwent numerous developments and changed names and shape, changed name and shapes to be indistinguishable in comparison to how it looked like where it is first practiced.
So the synthesis suggested by Hegel, okay, does it work here? In what way? Can you explain? Because it is purely theoretical here. In what way? You say, for example, labeling improves the performance of power. But don't you believe that there is an implicit criticism of power in the way it was applied, okay, on people in the teleology?
What do you mean criticism?
Now, is Roth criticizing power here, or is she praising it?
Well, I see she's not taking a side.
Not taking a side, that's it? What is the purpose of writing these three parts? What is the purpose?
It could be like giving us the path, not necessarily written by her.
Okay.
Like giving people the chance to write about and think about things that they didn't think about before.
Now, I want you to reconsider this part of the conclusion, because you say Hegel's synthetic misconception has been resolved through the analysis, enslavement, endowment. This is taken for granted, you say. You are stating the obvious, that enslavement underwent numerous development and changed names and shapes to be indistinguishable in comparison to how it looks like. Now, why I'm saying this? Because I believe that in writing this thesis, you left many things in the darkness. You focus on a number of points at the expense of other points. You should elaborate, you should talk more about. To begin with, a number of points, of course, I suggest. Now, Usually I check, of course, many sources about this teriology by Roth, and obviously it is comparable to both Hunger Games and Twilight. Okay, what do you note about these three works? These three novels? Yes. What do you note about? Have you noted points of similarities between, for example, Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, Twilight, for example, by Stephanie Meyers, and your teriology, Divergent, and other parts by Vernocka Roth? Have you?
Of course, there are a lot of similarities.
Can you, for example, because you know, at least if you, let's say, focus on them to say in what way it is different from them, they belong to the same, let's say, yes, they belong to the same. That is why, let's say, I expect you to talk more about them. Give me points of similarities that you find very interesting to your work and to you personally.
Well, the genre-wise,
dystopian, post-apocalyptic, and so on. All these coming of age and yes.
Yeah, those.
Okay.
And the way protagonists are put in situations and they defeat those situations.
Okay.
They're given again relating back to the genre.
Okay.
The events, the way they're left loose ends.
Okay.
They're not settled like.
What is the purpose of the Hunger Game? The protagonist. Katniss, yes. What is the purpose, for example, of this adventurous journey and the games she involves in to save her sister, if you remember?
Yeah, she.
What about Bella in Twilight? What is the purpose, for example? She madly falling in love. That is why they criticize her, saying that she's very naive and so on. And they want stronger female characters. The readers, of course, you are talking about here readers. But here, our Beatrice, what is the purpose? For example, just because she's strong character and so on, that is why she moves from one faction to another. You know, because the purpose of doing all these things, what is the purpose? What is the reason is missing here? Is missing here in this teriology. Don't you agree with me? Because I want to know why she's doing all these things. Okay.
Well, it needs deep thought analysis, but I see that it's not the point. That's not the point, because she's like our eyes. We're seeing the system and how it works from the inside through her eyes as a hero.
So this is her purpose.
It's not enough.
Now, what about that? The protagonist in the three novels are female. Have you, and the writers are, you know?
Yeah.
Have you, for example, does this fact draw your attention to something? Why, for example, women novelists and talking about all these things, commenting on our contemporary society in this way?
Well, hasn't it always been like this? Even from the very beginning of the novel.
I want an answer. This is a discussion, you know, between, let's say, two lovers of literature, two lovers of this type of literature, okay? This is just a discussion, just as you discuss with your friends, those with brilliant minds, you describe them. Okay, this is for you even in the future. Try to, for example, figure out why. Okay, we have these three works of art by women, and they are talking about female characters. Okay, not male. This is one.
Prof, can I say something about this?
Yes.
One before we go to the next?
Yes, of course.
There's been an old saying. They say that whoever lies about the things that they wish the most.
Okay.
Not necessarily lying, but these people are talking about things that are not existent in real life. They can talk a lot. They take their space.
I believe they do talk about things that are in real life. How, for example, now we are living in highly mechanized societies. Okay, we are gazed upon by cameras all in this university, in the corridors, in the rooms, everywhere, in the streets. Now she's describing, okay, what's really going on in real life. What is written here in your thesis, I agree with it. Okay, we are here under surveillance all the time. We are talking about, you are talking about, let's say, societies of control. Exactly. In London, for example, we have 4 million cameras all over. Okay, here in Iraq also. This is true. And yes, she's talking about real life situations. She's not talking about something, for example, imaginative, purely imagination. Science fiction now, not in the past. Okay. It's talking about real life. But I want you to think of the implication. Maybe because women, for example, are more, let's say, liable to fall victims to this system more than, I don't know. This is something for you to research, to look for.
Prof, can I?
Now.
Yeah.
Yes.
It reminds me of Scarlet Letter.
Okay,
by
what way?
Nathaniel Hawthorne, when he said, when he wrote his novel, even in the interviews, he said like it's a romance. It's not about now. It's about sometime far in the history. In order to avoid a lot of judgments and avoid, again, I repeat, avoid being a target.
We are not judging.
No, not us.
Yes,
I mean,
yes, we are not
her
judging.
society, her government, or
Yes.
maybe her publishers, even that. She can't talk like directly. She's talking, let's say, a science fiction. She's describing it as a science fiction, but as he said, she can be criticizing the society.
Okay, another a point to be considered. Another. Now, usually when I read, let's say, an analysis of a novel, for example, a short story, a play, I pay attention to details such as names. Okay. Now, you never mention, for example, what is the name of the protagonist? Yes, here.
I did, yeah. Beatrice.
Okay, very good. What's the meaning of the name? Why she changes to Tris? You never mention this. There are so many details concerning what's going on in the novel. What happens to characters, why they change names, for example, you never mention to it. It seems to me, overall, in general, you focus on concepts and ideas more than, but the novel is here, for example, what's going on in the novel is to supplement, to support the concepts you are dealing with. For example, Beatrice, what is Beatrice?
What or who?
What is the name, the meaning of Beatrice as a name?
Like the meaning in the dictionary, or who does it refer to? Because it refers to like Beatrice of Dante, I guess.
For example, another. Now, Beatrice is the person who makes, this is the name, makes people happy. For example, this is a Tris, because she changes after the initiation test, if you remember. She chooses a Tris, or 4 chooses for her Tris. What is the meaning of a Tris? You have to pay attention to these details, because it will enrich your argument. It will enrich, okay? And this transfer from one faction to another. There are changes that takes place in the character's life, okay? In her position, even in the names. A Tris, for example, if you check it in the, it is noble, it is patrician, and it is again sad. It is sad because she seems never happy. This Beatrice, she's all the time in conflict, okay, surrounded by dangers, by fears. That is why you have to pay attention to her as a person.
If I included that, I'm trying to think how can it be relevant to my argument. It could be related to resistance, maybe, yes, but I'm not talking about resistance in my
You are
thesis.
talking about here, about enslavement and about, let's transferring from one faction to another as a means of resisting, okay, the established system. The established system. Why she is chased, why she escapes on board the train and so on. as you mentioned here, it's a kind of resisting the established power system, you know. Now these are things I want you in the future, and this is my personal reading. I often encourage my student to look for details. Now the first thing is the names, for example, of characters. If they suggest something, if they can enrich the discussion. Okay. Another, for example, the characters all the time transfer from which faction to which faction?
There's no pattern. It's like random.
But the dominant pattern here.
We can say it's dominant because like two of our protagonists are doing that.
Yes.
But I know what you mean. You mean like from abnegation to dauntless.
For example, and from Kanda to dauntless, and from empty to dauntless. Why?
Like the more,
is there an implication, for example, a meaning of this moving from peace-oriented faction, for example, Kanda, and to dauntless?
It could be what.
Is it related to power, hunger, for example?
Or freedom, as they see it?
Or?
Freedom, because power, hunger is related to erudites.
Okay.
But dauntless seem like they give freedom, more freedom to their...
In what way? Dauntless, even dauntless, they are gazed upon. They are controlled. They are, you know, because control here as a theme, it seems endless, open-ended. Each one is, for example, gazing and controlling, and we don't know who is the ultimate, okay? Who is the ultimate source who controls and gaze everyone.
That is what I call gaze override, yeah.
Yes, you know, so it's a kind of game, you know, we don't know, it is an endless, open-ended game. That is why, again, I want you to consider this. Why, for example, this? Is there a meaning behind this conference, for example? They do not fit abnegation, they go to dauntless, Kanda, they go to dauntless, all the time dauntless here we have, you know.
Prof, as I said in my analysis of the not being, the visibility, they don't know that they're being observed. Like erudite, for example, each one of them, it's not mentioned in the movie.
But we have the control room, because later on only those fugitives, for example, those factionless, as you, let's say, Roth named them, they realize later on that there is someone who controls them.
But
those who is outside and inside.
True, but the control room isn't known, isn't popular by controlling the city in general. They say that it controls the gate, the outer gate, from the outside dangers.
From outside,
yeah.
Okay. Now, people who are living, for example, do they, for example, don't they know, or they, okay, choose not to know? Because, you know, unfortunately, I did not read the novels. I might have answers to my questions in the novels themselves.
Yeah, I can answer
Do they choose not to know, or they make ignorant by force, for example? Because this relates me later on. I'm going to ask you another question related to this point. Now, we have all the time principle of non-involvement, you say, okay? This is anti-faction adopts. Is it good or bad? Non-involvement, non-violence. These are two principles adopted by two, abnegation, I believe, and anti. Okay. Are they good or bad?
According to their principles, it's good, but according to the application, it's
but
like
ultimately they fall victims.
Exactly.
Because they were attacked, okay?
Because they were not involved. And when the power was overruled, they said that it's your fault because you didn't pick sides.
Okay, what about Roth here? Now, why they exist if they are submissive all the time? It's just a kind of balance. You know, someone who's very cruel, hard, and someone who's very soft and submissive.
Well, according to the that could be the point. But according to the Society of Chicago, Amity were responsible for like vegetables and plant things.
Yes.
Stuff. So like
They are very necessary. That's it. They are very necessary, for
They have their
example,
job,
to
they have
people.
their
But at
part.
the same time, they were severely attacked. Okay, and they try to destroy them. You know, yeah, your thesis, your choice, really is good and interesting and relevant. That is why this. Now, why Roth, the writer, is absent from the conclusion? The conclusion, you just summarize, saying that, for example, Divergent is discussed from interpolation point of view, and, for example, Allegiant is discussed or tackled from, and so on. What about Roth herself? At least in the conclusion, state Roth, for example, her point of view of the characters, of the events, for example, of the, let's say, type of power system, politics, and so on. I believe if you add something, okay, let's say, the points of view of Roth, really, it will enrich your conclusion.
Well, Roth herself was not like talking majorly in enslavement. I took it. I was criticized actually at the very beginning that it's not an enslavement part of a piece of work. Like I don't think
she's not talking about enslavement, but this is the title of, and this is your contribution, because you say literature review, and you say that this teleology was tackled from the Marxist point of view, for example, the postmodern point of view, the post-colonial point of view, and this is your contribution. Okay, your contribution is what? Is that you are talking about enslavement, something that is not done, written about before. Okay, but now you contradict yourself.
No, it's not. I didn't mean that. I analyzed it as an enslavement piece of work, but it's not. For example,
at least Roth's point of view about enslavement, about the types of enslavement that she is dealing with in her teleology.
Well, it's not an enslavement piece of work. I wouldn't find that even in interviews. I worked hard on interviews because that's the only access I had to Veronica. It's like she didn't discuss anything about enslavement because it's not an enslavement piece of work, according to her. Maybe she's not trying to show it.
According to her, it is not, let's say, about enslavement. And according
in an
to you,
explicit way.
And according to you,
it could be looked at or analyzed accordingly.
According to enslavement and all these things. You know, I want you to stick, because the title of your thesis is enslavement. So I believe that you adopt this topic. Okay, you are in favor of this topic, and you believe that this, let's say, topic is very present, very conspicuous. The manifestations of this topic are very conspicuous in this, these three parts, and that is why you are talking about, you know. We have now, of course, innocent knowledge and not innocent knowledge. You are, you talk about it. Innocent, do we have guilty knowledge? Yes, knowledge that involved in, let's say, enslaving people, because you talk about this.
Well, that's the
knowledge means.
That's the point of innocent knowledge. He said, by defining innocent knowledge, he said that there's no such thing as an innocent knowledge. Therefore, it could be as you defined it, it's a guilty knowledge.
Okay. Now we have protagonist. Now, who is the antagonist?
I think that's the point of modern novels. They hide. They don't show it as the classical novels that this is the protagonist, this is the antagonist, or as the classical in the drama, like man versus man or man versus God.
Okay.
So that's.
We don't have antagonists, but we have factions. Okay, and we have conflict theory, and we have people who are fighting against each other. So it should be.
For example, at the very beginning of the part one, we see that I forgot her name.
What about Peter? What about Peter?
Yeah,
Peter is the antagonist of Beatrice.
I was going to read that, but he can be an antagonist, like a major one, because his role is so minor. Even I don't remember her name in the novel, but in the movie, Kate Winslet was her representative, the representative of Erudite, the leader
Yes.
of Erudite. Yeah, she at the very beginning she was pictured as the antagonist.
So at least since we are, let's say, we are dealing with conflicts, at least you have to define who is who, okay? Beatrice, for example, if she is factionless, who is the, let's say, her main enemy, let's say rival and so on, opponent. There is a problem with the presentation of characters, with the analysis of characters, for example, because many characters are missing, or there are very slight references to them, and you did not explain their positions in the novel. Okay, why, for example, what is their relation to the protagonist, to Beatrice, or to other characters? A question, for example, are all the characters white? Are some of them black, for example? Because we are dealing with enslavement, and in the appendix you are talking about black slaves, auctions, for example. Do we have black characters in the novel here?
Yes, but in an irrelevant way.
Nothing is irrelevant in the novel. Each line counts, each character, whether secondary, or main, each one character counts.
Prof, there was no color discrimination. Like, for example, black people,
Okay,
they were not discriminated.
which means this is, for example, this is in the past, almost it is associated with the black people in America. Modern day does not discriminate, enslavement does not discriminate. People, white people as well as black people, both of them are enslaved in this new system. This is the point, This is the point, because we have character, Christina, let's say, originally you can say in America, enslavement was, for example, related to black people, maybe Indian also, okay? But in modern America, okay, white or all of them are enslaved by various systems, political systems, economic systems, even we have economic enslavement and so on. Again, I want, this is just my personal reading, I want you to pay attention to these details. Now, all the characters are living in, as you describe it, a fear-based reality. Okay? Now, but just as Dr. Asma, and you may have an explanation, you say, why didn't you talk about refer to Franz Fanon? I told you, why didn't you refer to Zygmunt Bauman? He's talking about, a book, Liquid Fear. Okay? Like liquid modernity and then liquid fear. Liquid fear refers to people who are living in a constant state of fear. Okay, fear of what? For example, even in democracies like America, governments all the time are creating outside enemies. ISIS, for example. Okay? Let's say, yes, what we call the thorax, I believe, a Jarfomia, as we say. Different source, Islamist, for example, Islamism. All the time people are living in a state of insecurity, in a state of fear. That is why they want someone to save them. Who's to save them? The government, the political system. And that is why they obey and follow blindly. It is a chain. It is a chain. Now, again, something related, of course, I believe Bauman is very relevant to your work if you are talking about fear. Now, there are, back to the meanings of names, there is four, this character, who helps the monitor of Beatrice, for example. Okay. Why he's named four?
Because he had only 4 fears in the fear landscape.
Okay, very beautiful. Why didn't you mention this? I read it from the first line till the end. You never explain something. And because of these 4 fears. Now, what about his, let's say, his childhood?
All four fears were based on his childhood.
And what happens in his childhood?
His dad used to beat him with a belt, one.
Okay.
And his fear of heights.
Yes, I know. But what about the father-son relationship? Because families, you know, he was abused by his father. He was abused by his father. This four character, you know, as a character. You have to mention this in order to understand why he is living in such kind of, for example, confusion, insecurity, let's say, fear all the time, you know. Even the tattoos in his spine, if you remember, he puts dauntless at now. This applies to the initiation test, because she has to pass, again, 4 types of fear. This is for Beatrice. What are they?
Crows, fire, confined spaces.
Yes.
One more, just one more.
Now, for example, again, this is she's no longer Beatrice, she's a Tris after the initiation test. We have being attacked by crows, okay, and we have what is beautiful in the teleology is that it is full of symbols. Many things stand for other things, okay, and all of them are related. If you look, if you dig deep into these symbols, I'm sure your discussion will be very, very beautiful. Symbol of not having power to control. Look at, all the time I believe when I read it's about power. All the time it's about power. Now, drowning. Okay, drowning means powerless and trapped. Now, again, intimacy. Now, it is symbolic of 4. Why? Because 4 wants her body, not her. And this is something part of the romance element in the story. And killing her family members, you know, because what happens to Kalb, her brother? Well, she shoots him. To her mother at the end. All of them were killed. But what is her reaction? She's not affected.
Insecurity.
She's not that emotionally affected, and this is something very strange for her as a girl, for example, and as a female character. Again and again, I want you to pay attention. Killing the family members, symbolic of watching her family die and being even responsible for death sometimes, you know, because Kalb, you know Kalb, what did Kalb do in the third part?
He went back to erudite.
Okay.
The people in power, and according to
he
her,
did what?
sold her out.
He deserves his death. Why? Because he betrays.
He betrayed her.
Yes, he betrays, you know. Power, ultimately, power surely entails betrayal. Surely entails betrayal, because those honest have no place in the realm of politics. Again, we have, another question, and of course, injected site, you talk about this. You refer to bodyguard. Bodyguard is very important for you. On page 63, please. Look at here. We have. Of course, you are talking about governmentality, and it's again very important for you. 66. No, I believe 63. Sorry, 63. Yes. Now, the last paragraph, please read.
As a part of
As
a part of a comprehensive false consciousness that erudite was trying to build, they offered the city, in opposition to abnegation, an alternative ruler who could provide them with safety and prosperity, since abnegation leaders did not. Because in times of trouble, as Baudelaire has said it, people will vote massively for the candidate who does not want them to think. Erudites have better chances of winning the acceptance of the government, and hence it is qualified to become the new leaders the new leaders in the government after their attack on abnegation, the previous leaders of the government.
Now look at, people will vote massively for the candidate who does not ask them to think. How can you relate this to another idea, herd mentality? You mentioned it, and it's very beautiful. And it refers us back to 1984 by George Orwell, you know, because we have, and to the Animal Farm. Okay, we have here. Now, and it's a kind of enslavement, because it deprives one of his free will, of his individualism. He's all the time following others, listening to others, and he has no, let's say, will of his own. Okay, no desires of his own. Okay, what others dictate him to do, he will do it. You know? You have many ideas. The point I want to raise that the ideas are very beautiful, but somehow you fail to connect them, okay, in an organic way, in a comprehensive way, that something lead to something else. That's it. Might be, of course, let's say, epigraph talk about, okay, we have binaries, interpolation. I believe I cover, because my colleagues have already covered all the points I would like to comment on. Besides, I look at your corrigenda, but you missed to correct some of the words. I pinpoint them to you and align them to you, and for example, in the thesis itself. And I note something that all the time you do. There's a somehow slight amount of repetition in your thesis. Sometimes you repeat even lines. You know, I can give you example. Most famous one.
The bus experience.
Yes. And not only that, repetition, you all the time you say in other words, you know. I don't know why this repetition of other words. Don't you trust your reader understanding your, for example, statements, your paragraphs and so on?
Well, that would be good, because as I said in the acknowledgement, my proofreading family, as I called it, there were one PhD, 2 MA, and a BA.
And that's it?
So,
yes?
That's like the major people.
Too many.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the PhD would understand this simply.
You don't need, because Dr. Amr is your supervisor. And you don't need all these proof readers.
Of course, but what I'm trying to say that I get feedbacks. Especially from the BA who didn't read any, let's say, theory or let's say literary criticism. So I could use their notes and to see whether they understood what I'm trying to say or not. So when I say in other words, I'm trying to simplify what I have said before,
yes,
and I doubt, or let's say, in some of them I had notes on that they did not understand this point, or they could not relate. So when I say in other words, I'm trying to simplify what has been said. And at the same time, if the reader sees that he understood the point from the very beginning, he can skip to the next paragraph.
Okay, thank you, Mustafa. Finally, again, I would like to say that good pieces of writing are the pieces who are able to make people raise a question and discuss them. And now is the floor is the supervisors, our honorable supervisors, Dr. Amr. I'm sure that he has many things to say, okay, in defense of you. You do not need defense, because that's what I guess, or what I sense in your responses, but I'm sure that he has many points to add.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Chairwoman, Professor Hannah, and thank you very much, the members of the examining committee, for your enriching commentaries on Mustafa's thesis. I believe they add
you need
a
this?
lot to. I don't.
Oh.
I think they add a lot to the present work in question. and to Mustafa's future experience as a scholar.
I'm sure.
Actually, I myself have been enriched by your commentaries and enlightened about the many points that you suggested and commentaries that you made. First of all, I would like to talk about my personal experience with Mustafa as a researcher. I gave him the tools by which he dismantled my authority. And I enlightened him about the role of academia in using the power-knowledge nexus. And he used it against my own power. So he dismantled my authority right from the outset, and I stood helpless. And he resisted many of the points made by you, and you are quite right. For example, your objection to his use of long sentences, I kept putting my remarks on his drafts. Loose sentences, long sentences. But this is his twist of a phrase, that he's so fond of the compound, complex sentences, but still some of the sentences are misleading, and the reader gets confounded about who's who and which is which. Okay, so we might have corrected some of them and forget about many of them. I would like to refer to Dr. Ayar's contribution to the discussion of the thesis. Some of the points regarding the choice of the MLA or Chicago style. Actually, he opted to write his thesis according to MLA, but I convinced him not to, because I'm the supervisor. I thought I have the authority. This is no regulations that tell us that we should or must write following the MLA. The Chicago is used quite it is used in the publication in the academic journals nowadays, especially the 16th edition. I prefer it personally, and I thought it would be better for the thesis to be written. It is a matter of preference, maybe. I don't know. Indentation in the block quotations, maybe if it is in the origin, it will be kept, okay, in the block quotation. If there is indentation in the origin, otherwise it should be
In all the codes. He did them in all the codes.
in all of the. You should.
Most of my
do
codes
the
actually
correction,
start
yeah.
with the very beginning I took it from the beginning and emphasize what I need.
Yeah, I do agree with you, Dr. Ashar, concerning the format of the epigraphs. Though I disagree with Mustafa to the contents of the epigraphs, they must be used in a symbiotic way. They must be connected organically to the content of the whole chapter, and they must be highly suggestive of the upcoming content. They are preparing the reader, okay, intellectually and psychologically to the upcoming reading material. Long paragraphs, we said something about that, and I advised him to chop them down, but again he ruled out the opposite. Okay, he defied my authority.
Resistance.
Resistance. This resistance is part of power, according to Michel Foucault. It is something quite complicated. The power of resistance. Resistance is a kind of power, and he's acting out his share of power. Okay, and I let him do it. The abstract. Yeah. You are referring to the lack of the theoretical approach, to the mention of the theoretical approach. Yeah, you are right, Doctor. I hope Mustafa, I will see to that he includes something about the approach in the abstract. Edward Said, why not? Edward Said. Okay, Edward Said is a Foucauldian thinker. The genesis of his theory might be found in Foucault's theorizing about the concept of power knowledge. But he must, I put it in my remark here, there is a mention of the Orient and the West. This might be done away with, okay? Because it is irrelevant, Mustafa, okay? Okay. How much time? About the titling of the first chapter, theoretical framework. Okay, you are right. He must specify something. Okay, there must be. We are dealing with a literary thesis.
Why not, for example, enslavement, conceptual background? Because he's talking about, talking about enslavement. Other things.
Theoretical
because
framework.
Because historical literature, if you want, but a conceptual background, it will fit.
Or anything of his choice, but he must specify something, and instead of theoretical, and even the word introduction. Dr. has suggested introduction. Just introduction.
Something introduction.
Could be, yes.
Enslavement and introduction.
The literature review, you doctor, objected to the literature review. You are right concerning the specifying the names of the authors, titles of the articles, of the books. I advised him to do this, but you must have forgotten. I don't know, Mustafa, this is a must. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ashar, for your contribution to the enrichment of the thesis. Ms. Esma, Chicago style, again you objected to Chicago style. It is a question of preference.
In my papers I use APA because it was recommended in journals, academic journals.
And in my PhD dissertation I used the APA till the last moment. I changed it to MLA. Following the instructions, but I got into many troubles rewriting the thesis as if I were rewriting the dissertation. I didn't intervene in the writing of the acknowledgement, okay, because it is something. I thought then it is something personal. Maybe the psychological minds. It is questionable. Yeah, the psychological minds, the very use of psychological, it is a problematic, Mustafa, as far as style and
to aggrandize,
to
aggrandize things, that's why
But this is his own space. I thought, as far as the whole thesis is concerned, this is his own space, and I didn't want to intervene. Fanon, Fanon, when I'm teaching my students literary theory, I think Fanon, he's belongs to the pre-theory of post-colonialism, because he's the least systematic theorist about post-colonialism, and he's theorizing because Mustafa opted to do away with psychological or the psychoanalytic aspect of in his thesis. So I saw then that it is better for him to, because Fanon is concerned with the psychopathology of post-colonialism, and this will take much more space.
I just want him to refer to the idea of inferiority complex, which is closely related to enslavement.
Yeah.
Not Franz Fanon in general.
Can we postpone this because the minister is here in the college and they might need the
I might finish right now.
Yes, if you allow us.
Okay, doctor, okay.
But I'll discuss my points with you
later on, after. Finally, I would like to thank you again, my dear colleagues. Yes? He's upstairs in the department?
No, he's in the area.
He's around, yes. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you allow us 5 minutes? Okay.
بالعكس ما عندي اشكال. لا
حضروني قالوا لي يحضرون اسسكم.
اصلا نقلتوني انا ناشف ريجي.
لا دكتور بس يعني وندرفul work يعني
فقط يعني
لا والله ابدا. انا يعني تمتعت جدا بتعليقاتكم، يعني انا استفاديت منها على الصعيد الشخصي، يعني مو فكيف هو يعني
تروح صراحه.
دكتور عامر تعطي رسلناه تعطي حضرتك على نسبة يعني هنا بالسوفت الأزرق دكتور، وهنا وهنا. دكتورة حبيبتي.
عليكم السلام. هو طالب ممتاز.
إن شاء الله.
نعم.
أي نعم. ها
جيتك شفت
بس لك. تفضلي دكتورة. شو بدي أن نقول دكتور؟ ورا صور. ورا صور.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وعليه نتوكل. محضر مناقشة طالب الماجستير. اجتمعت لجنة المناقشة المؤلفة بموجب الأمر الإداري بالعدد 1181 في 17 من الشهر الرابع 2019 مناقشة طالب الماجستير مصطفى عباس صحن من قسم اللغة الانكليزية تخصص أدب عن رسالته الموسومة الاستبعاد في ثلاثية المختلف لفيرونيكا في تمام الساعة 9 صباحا من يوم الاثنين الموافق 27 من الشهر الخامس 2019 في قاعة أستاذ الدكتور هاشم شلاش. وقد أخذت اللجنة بنظر الاعتبار الجهود العلمية المبذولة من الطالب واستخدامه للمراجع ودفاعه عن رسالته وأسلوب بحثه والنتائج التي توصل إليها. وعليه قررت اللجنة استنادا إلى المادة 33 من تعليمات الدراسات العليا قرار اللجنة قبول الرسالة بعد إجراء تعديلات طفيفة عليها والتوصية بمنح الشهادة بدرجة مستوف. ألف مبروك. إن شاء الله دكتورة.
هو شاطر شاطر.
إيه لا سهلة. إن شاء الله دكتورة.
شكرا دكتورة.
إن شاء الله.
شكرا دكتورة، شكرا جزيلا.
بالتوفيق إن شاء الله.
مصطفى.
هاي
شكرا جزيلا.
بالتوفيق بس
شكرا دكتور.
شكرا جزيلا، فرصة طيبة يا شيخ.
لا لا بالعكس
شرفتينا والله.
بالعكس الشرف لنا والله.
تمام. شكرا جزيلا دكتور.
هاي رسالتي يعني باكر وراي
شكرا دكتورة. وقتنا دكتورة. يوم فاصل؟
مروة